Okay everybody, so this is lesson 2, but before you start watching this video, take a look at the Khan Academy video that I posted on Google Classroom a couple days ago. It goes over how to complete the square in case if you forgot how to do that from last year, and that's going to be something that we do in this lesson, and that video explains it really well too. So if you want to have some extra practice with that, it is on there. And it's a good idea to watch that before this video so you have a better idea of what's going on. So for the first part of this, we're going to expand x plus 2 squared. So that means we're going to actually do the multiplication. When you square something, you're multiplying it times itself. And the way I'm used to doing this, and this is the way I do it most of the time, is by double distributing. So you take the first piece and you multiply it times the first part of the second parentheses and times the other part. So x times x is x squared and x times 2 is 2x. Then you take the 2 here and you double distribute this way, so you've got 2 times x and 2 times 2. So 2 times x and 2 times 2, which is 4. And then you combine like terms, so x squared, then these two are the same, so we put them together. So 2 plus 2 is 4, and then we've got 4 there. You could also do this with this little chart where you've got x plus 2 and x plus 2. And then you multiply in the boxes, so like this piece right here is going to be x times x, so that's x squared. This part right here is 2 times x, so that's a positive 2x. This part here is x times 2, so that is, again, positive 2x. And then right here comes from 2 times 2, so that is positive 4. And then you add them up diagonally. So we've got this, which is just x squared, these two added together, which is 4x, and then this piece, which is 4. And then you get the same thing for both. You can use the same process to do part B here. But another trick that works with these, whenever you have something that looks like this, where you've got x or y plus or minus a number, and then you square it, you could always put it in this format, where you've got, whether it's x or y, you square it, and then the second piece is this number times 2, so -6, and then you put whatever that is with it. And then the third piece is always going to be this number squared, okay? So that's going to be plus 9, okay? This will always be a plus. This will be negative if this number was negative, and positive if that number was positive. So we're going to use that to write the equation of this circle, that's a circle equation, without any parentheses. Okay, we're going to end up putting it in standard form. So standard form is when you've got something that looks like this. This is probably what you're used to seeing. X squared plus something with x to the first plus some number and have it equal to 0. And then we put these in order. Okay, so like goes 2, 1, then just a regular number here. You could have more things over here too. And it goes from biggest exponent down to smallest exponent. So that's what we're going to end up doing with this. So if we look at our equation here, we already know the answer to this because we did it for the first part. So that is x squared plus 4x plus 4. And then y minus 3 squared was y squared minus 6y plus 9. And then we have the equals 4 over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to combine like terms. So as you can see, we have positive 4 and positive 9 here as the only like terms in this. There's nothing else that we can combine. So we're going to keep all of the other stuff the same, but then add 4 plus 9 to get 13. And we want it to equal 0. Okay, that's what it says to do here. So we're going to take the 4 right here, and we're going to move it to the other side. And the way we move a positive number to the other side is we're going to subtract it. And when you do that, this is going to be your answer. And the other thing that I did here is I moved some things around, okay? I took this piece, okay? That's what we usually are used to doing. But I also just put the squareds together, and then I moved these together, okay? I didn't combine them, but I put them in order. And that's the order for standard form, okay? And with standard form for any circle, you're going to have your x squared and your y squared first, and then you're going to have different numbers in here, okay? In this case, we've got 4 to be in the D spot, -6 to be in the E spot, and 9 to be in the F spot. So that's going to be basically our answers for this first part, okay? We put this in standard form. So we're going to do this again. We're going to practice a couple more times. If you think you've got it, then pause the video and try it on your own, at least the first couple steps. But we're just going to follow the same exact process. So here we go with the first one. X minus 1 squared is going to be x squared minus 2x plus 1. Okay, I got that by doing x minus 1 times x minus 1. Right? And by doing the same processes that we did in the opening exercise, that's how I got this. Do the same thing for y plus 2. That's going to be y squared plus 4y plus 4. And then we're going to keep the other side of the equal side the same. And then we're going to take the other pieces of this, and you can put them in order whenever you want because that piece doesn't matter. What we're going to do is we combined these two like terms, and then we put the rest of this in order. So we put x squared here, y squared over here, and then these two pieces here, just so that it was in this standard form order. And then we take the plus 1 and the plus 4, combine those together to get plus 5, and then you're going to subtract 34 on both sides to make this equal 0, and you're going to get this as your final answer. Okay, so this equation down here is equal to this equation up here, it's just written a different way. So if you feel confident with that one, go ahead and try the next one. And here's the answer. So for the first part, x minus 2 squared gives us x squared minus 4x plus 4. And then y plus 4 squared gives us y squared plus 8y plus 16. And then if you put everything in order, you're going to have this. And then again, you're going to combine like terms, and we get 20. Okay, everything else here, this all stays the same, it's just written first. Then you're going to subtract 1 from both sides, and we're going to have this as our final answer. Okay, so if we were going to do this, but backwards, so now we're going to start with this, and we're going to try and end up with our answer looking like the parentheses. So we're going to go in this direction. We're going to be given something that looks like this, and our answer is going to have 2 sets of parentheses and a number over here. The reason we're going to try and make it go in that direction is because when it's written like this, we can figure out the center based on these 2 numbers and the radius based on that number. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch the last video. So we're going to remove the standard form version of this, and we're going to write it in center radius form. So that means write it so that you can figure out the center and the radius. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to complete the square. Okay, this is going to be a little bit different than what you're used to because now we're going to complete the square for 2 different quadratics at the same time. Because we have the x's over here and the y's over here. So how we're going to start this is the same way we did it before, like you did in Algebra 1, but we're just going to do 2 at the same time. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in blanks here, put your x's together and your y's together, and you add blanks for both. And whatever you do to one side, you have to do the other, so make sure you have blanks over here. I usually like to even write 2 blanks, that way I remember to do both of them instead of just one. So what we're going to do is we're first going to try and figure out what goes in these blanks. So we're going to take the middle value, 2, for the x part, and we're going to divide it by 2 and then square it. And the reason we're doing that is because if you take a look at the opening exercise pieces, one of the ones we did in the opening exercise was x plus 2 squared. So if we look at x plus 2 squared, that equals x squared plus 4x plus 4. We know the 4 goes here. But if we didn't know, all we would have to do is take this number, divide it by 2, and then square it, and that's going to equal whatever goes here. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, 2 squared is 4. You could do the same thing with the y minus 3 that we did in the opening exercise. Y minus 3 squared, we knew equaled this. Okay, we know that there's going to be a 9 here. Okay, we know this is a 9. But the way you can figure that out is taking this number, -6, dividing it by 2, and squaring it. So -6 divided by 2 is 3. Square it, you get 9. So that's another way of getting those missing pieces for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that idea to find the missing piece. So we're going to do 2 divided by 2 and square it. Okay, so that is what goes right here. 2 divided by 2 and you square it, which is going to end up being 1. Okay, we've got it written a couple different ways here. So that's just the x's. Okay, now we're going to hold on for a minute with the x's and start doing the y's. So for the y's, we have -4. So we're going to do -4 over 2 and square it. And that goes in the blank that we had right here. And then when you do -4 over 2, that is -2. And when you square that, you get +4. And that's this piece. So now we've got the y's done. And the 2 things that we have here, this one and this one, you can add on to the other side as well, because whatever you do to one side, you have to do the other, which I would wait until the next step to do that, because then you've got a 1 and a 4 to add on instead of doing these fractions again. So we've got a 1 and a 4, and then you're going to combine everything on this side all together, and you get a 4. And then on this side, you can even skip this part right here, because if you see this and you factor it and get this, it's always going to end up being something like this, where you're going to have x plus or minus something squared and then y plus or minus something squared. Because we're doing this trick of having b over 2 squared, that's always going to end up giving you something that looks like this. So I'm going to show you a little bit of a shortcut for this in the next problem, because I have a way of writing it that's a little bit quicker for me. But if you're used to this way, then go ahead and do this way. This is the way you see it most of the time. And the reason we're doing this is because we want to find the center and the radius. So because of this form that we have, we can tell that the center is -1, 2, because we have a 1 and a -2 here. And you're going to change the signs. And that is going to be your center. And then your radius is going to be the square root of this number. Okay, so that's going to be the square root of 4, which is 2. if you want to see the original equation for this, it looks like this. You have x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, where h and k, that's your center. So that's why we've changed the signs, because it's subtraction in these. Okay, so that's basically what we're going to do for this. Right now, I'm going to give you another one like this, and we're going to find the center and radius again. So to do that, we're going to have to complete the square for both the x's and the y's. So let's do it in steps. Let's first put the x's together. So we've got x squared minus 6x, so this and this, and we're going to leave a blank, okay, because we know we're going to put a number there. Then if we do the y's, we've got these pieces, so we've got plus y squared plus 2y plus blank, and then we're going to put anything else that we've got on the other side. So this 6 that's left over, add that to the other side so that we have a 6 over here. And we're going to have these 2 blanks, so we need to make sure we have 2 blanks over here also. Okay, so now we're going to do that process where we take this number, divide it by 2, and square it, and so on. But I'm going to show you what I do, because I like doing it this way because it's a little bit faster. So if we look at just the x's, okay, we know we're going to take this number and divide it in half and square it and then go ahead and factor. But to skip that step a little bit, I'm just going to go like this. We know it's going to end up looking like that. We know that the y's are going to end up looking like this. And then we're going to have some number over here. So I like to get it set up first, and then this will always be true. If you take, I'm going to put it in different colors so we can see what's going on here. So we've got -6. If we divide that by 2, we get -3. And then if we square that, square it, then we're going to have 9. And then if we were going to have this piece right here and we factored it, it's going to equal this. Okay, that's always going to happen. So this way is just a little bit faster for those of you who are doing each of these steps like this. And it works for everything that you're going to do. So if you take this piece and you divide this by 2, you're going to get +1, and then 1 squared is 1. So we're still doing the same steps. We're still taking this and we're doing this divided by 2 and then squaring it and putting it here. But now our next step of factoring is already done for us, because when you factor, it's always going to be half of whatever this number is anyway. So we just wrote it down as one of our steps. And once you put in the 9 and the 1 here, you have to make sure you put it in over here as well. And then you're going to end up getting 16 on this side. So now we've completed the square in less steps. And that's the way that I usually do it, because I like to write the least amount as possible while still showing exactly what I did. Okay? So you can do it that way. That's like the minimum that I'm going to ask that you guys write down. You could write more than that. You can do it whichever way you like best. But this is bare minimum. I need to see at least this part. So we're going to have the question answered at some point here. So we need the center and the radius. So the center is going to come from these pieces. So we're going to have it be 3 and -1. Okay, that comes from the opposite of each of these. And then the radius is going to be the square root of whatever's over here. So that means it's going to be 4. Now if we go ahead and try this again for the next one, if you want, try it on your own first, and then pause the video, All right, pause the video first, try it on your own, then press play and see if you get the same thing as me. Okay, so if we start this one, we want to first put our x's together and our y's together and the other number on the other side. Okay, so this 9 is going to go over here, and then we're also going to put our x's and y's together. So we've got x squared minus 12x. The y is going to go over here. And we're going to have negative 9 on the other side because these canceled out and this is going here. Make sure you add in your blanks. You have a blank after every time you have something squared. So you have the x's squared and then also the other x in here. And then you have the y squared with the other y, and you're going to have a blank. So we're going to put in 2 blanks here because we had 2 blanks on the other side. And then we're going to get our next part set up. So we know we're going to have an x with something squared and a y with something squared. And we're going to fill in the rest of this. So we're going to do this divided by 2 and then square it. And then we're going to have this divided by 2 and then square it. And whatever you do to one side, the 36 and 25 goes over here. And when you combine all of this stuff together, you're going to get 52. And now we're going to be able to find the center and the radius. So the center is going to come from these pieces. So we've got 6, negative 5. And our radius is going to be the square root of 52. And it did ask for it in simplest radical form. So we're going to split this into 4 and 13, which gives us 2 radical 13. So we're going to do a couple more examples like this, but these are the ones that your homework looks like. Okay, so you're going to follow that process. Again, this is like your bare minimum. You have to show at least this for me to be able to see what you're doing. Okay, so this question, we're going to do the same idea. We're going to first find the center and the radius because it's asking us to determine the maximum y value for this circle. So we're going to try and graph it. We're going to do a little sketch of a graph, and we're going to get an idea of what this is going to look like. So first, I'm going to put the 39 on the other side. And then when you go and you put your x's and y's in order, you'll notice that you don't have another y, you just have this one. So you're just going to put it by itself next. So we've got x squared minus 16x plus blank, and then your y's is just y squared. And you can put a blank in there too if you'd like, but it's not going to change it. Okay, and you'll see why in a minute. And then here, let me just slide this over. All right, so we're going to do the x's first. For the x's, we're going to do negative 16 divided by 2, which is negative 8, and negative 8 squared is 64. And then for the y's, we don't have a number in the middle, so it's really plus 0y, and 0y has 0 as the coefficient, so 0 divided by 2 is 0, and 0 squared is 0. So you could just leave that as y squared. You don't need all of the extra stuff, okay? Just leave it as y squared. And then our other pieces here, we've got 64 and 0, so we're going to put those in here. And if you combine all of this, you're going to get 25. And when you go and find the center and radius for this, the center is going to be 8, and then there's nothing here. It's y plus 0 or y minus 0, which is 0. And our radius is going to be the square root of 25, which is 5. So to answer our question, if we had this graph, the center is 8, 0, so it's about here. We know it's definitely going to be on that line somewhere. And the radius is 5. It's a little off. Let's see if I can make that look a little better. There we go. So the radius is 5. So that means 5 in this direction, 5 in that direction, 5 up, 5 down, 5 which direction you can go in. But we're trying to figure out the maximum y value. So that means how high up here is it going to be? So that means this, the highest spot here, can only be 5. We can go all the way up to 5 and all the way down to negative 5. So the maximum y value is going to be 5. And that's our answer. For exercise 4, it's again giving us something in standard form, and we have to try and find the coordinates. So, of course, there's more than one way to do a lot of these problems. If you wanted, you could put these in the formula that we did for the last lesson. You could plug them in and then you can multiply them all out and get it in standard form, or you can complete the square. Okay? And completing the square is a little bit easier because you only have to do it once, and if you were doing it the other way, you'd have to do it for each one of these. So, we're going to complete the square. So we're going to put everything where it belongs. So we've got the x's together, which there's just the one x, so you can just leave that by itself. And then the y's, we've got y squared minus 6y plus blank, and you put the 1 on the other side. So we subtract it, minus 1 gives us minus 1 over here. And then we're going to put in our blank because we have a blank here. So if we were going to factor x squared, it's still just x squared or x minus 0 squared. Okay, if you want to think of it that way so that you can find the center. For everything here, the x value is 0, so that actually doesn't help us that much. But if we go ahead and look at the next part, we've got the y's, and we've got negative 6. If you divide that by 2, you get negative 3, and then when you square it, you get 9. So that means that our center is going to be 0, positive 3, and our radius is going to be the square root of 8. Okay, so if you take a look at this, our only option that has 0, 3 is choice 1. But if you wanted to double check, the square root of negative 8 can be split into the square root of 4 and the square root of 2, which is 2 square root 2. So this works as well. And then for the last one, we're going to do the same process again. We're just going to complete the square for both the x's and the y's, and we're going to find the center and the radius. So for this one, we don't have any extra numbers on the end. We just have our x's and we have our y's. So we're going to take the x's and write those out again and give us a blank space. Do the same thing with the y's. Oops, plus blank. And then, let me slide this over. And then we've got 0 plus blank plus blank. So I'm going to do this one. I'm going to talk through it a different way. That way, if you don't like the way that I've been doing it, maybe this way will help. So we're going to do b over 2 squared. Okay, so the number here, that's a, 16 is b, and this number is c. So we're going to do b over 2 squared. So b over 2 is 8, and 8 squared is 64. So you can just write 8 squared here, or you can write 64. Do the same thing for this section. So we have 1 as A, negative 10 as B, and this is C. We're going to do B over 2 squared. So B over 2, that's negative 10 over 2, so that's negative 5. Negative 5 squared is 25. So our two blanks are 64 and 25. So we're going to put 64 and 25 over here. And then our next step is to factor each of these. So for the x's, if we were going to factor that, we know that we've got x's in the first spot, and our two numbers that we put here, they're going to have to add to this piece and multiply to the c, okay? So if they're adding to 16 and multiplying to 64, the only choice that you have there is to have positive 8 for both. And then for the y's, we're going to have two sets of parentheses like this. We know that the two things that we put here are going to have to add to negative 10 and multiply to positive 25. So that means that we're going to have negative 5 and negative 5, because when you add them together you get negative 10, and when you multiply them together you get positive 25. Like I was saying before, what's always going to happen with these is this number is going to be half of that number. And you can see that's true here as well. And these two are always going to be the same in these cases. When you're completing the square, your final answer is always going to be something squared plus something squared. And if we look at the other side of our equal sign, we've got 0 plus 64 plus 25 from our blanks, and that's going to give us 89. And we're going to continue that down here. So to answer the question, to find the center and the radius, the center is going to be the opposite of 8, so negative 8, and the opposite of negative 5, so that's positive 5, or you can think of it as x minus a negative 8, so we've got negative 8, and y minus 5, which is 5. And then our radius is going to be the square root of 89. Okay, that's because this piece over here is r squared, so to find r, we're going to need to do the square root of both. Okay, so for the homework, you're going to do basically what we just did. You're going to take these and you're going to complete the square to find the center and the radius. Now, for those of you guys that actually watched the whole video, you'll see that I'm only going to check A, B, and C. You don't have to do D, and you don't have to do the second page. Okay? If you watch the video and you watch the whole thing, you only have to do A, B, and C.